Ronda Rousey just released a book. And in that book, she said a few things that are a little bit off the wall. Right? Number one, she said that she's been suffering basically nonstop concussions since she was a kid, particularly going into that fight with Holly Holm. She said that she stuck around far too long in the sport for one reason and one reason only, and that was to please the fans. The fans wanted so much of her. These fans were basically found on Twitter, but these fans wanted so much of her and they demanded so much that she kept going for them. She said that these same fans turned on her once she lost the fight with Amanda Nunes. And to wrap it all up, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, right? There's a lot more details, but I'm trying to give the high level overview. But to wrap it all up, she said that if everybody knew the truth, if everybody knew the whole story, that she would be universally recognized as the greatest of all time. Now, as you can imagine, when she comes out with something like this, a few people got a few things to say. And a lot of people have just basically come out and dismissed everything she said and said she's delusional. And I get that. I understand where they're coming from, because when you hear it on the surface, man, it sounds crazy. Ronda Rousey, the greatest of all time, as though we didn't see the fight with Holly Holm, as though we didn't see that fight with Amanda Nunes, as though we can't imagine how some fights with some people out there right now would have looked if she would have still been around in the octagon or whatever. We can imagine all that. One of the opinions that I found really interesting was Chael's son. Right? So Uncle Chael gets on there and he's talking about it a little bit and he says a few things. But basically he talks about it as a cautionary tale. Right? He references the interview with Cat Williams and Shannon Sharp, where he was talking about Kanye West, saying, hey, look, if Ronda Rousey is coming out and saying that she's having neurological issues, she's saying that she's having all these concussions, should we still come out now and criticize her for what she's saying? Is that fair? Is that right? Somebody just came out and said that they've got neurological issues. Why are we now going to judge what they're saying and try to hold them accountable as though what they're saying is coming from a person who's not having neurological issues, who's thinking clearly, right? That's one aspect. Another aspect would be believing your own hype. Super cautionary tale when it comes to that. Believing your own hype, believing that you're as big as you are, as good as you are, as important or as dominant as you are, right? Because we saw Ronda Rousey, Olympic medalist, world champion in multiple organizations, came out there. She was blowing the doors off a lot of these girls. That was really, truly happening. We went there. We saw all these fights. She was a dominant force. But above and beyond all that, we saw what the UFC did. We saw the way the UFC media machine just went into overdrive with her story and her image and everything about her. And she was just going crazy and the things that she was doing. And she was just reveling in all of it. It's a cautionary tale about believing your own hype. You know, it's one thing to read about the stuff. It's one thing to live the life. It's a whole other thing to actually believe it. Because then all of a sudden you reach these situations, and she mentioned herself, that was my whole identity. Everything came crashing down. And all of a sudden you find yourself where you're in a situation like today. Right? She's coming out here and she's writing this book and she's giving these interviews. And to protect her ego, to protect the fragileness of it all, to protect the image of it all, she's still coming out here and saying, these fans turned on me when I lost to Amanda Nunes. They turned on me when I lost to Holly Holm. They were celebrating on the worst day of my life. They were saying I didn't know how to fight. And that really hurt me. I was there. Huge fan of the UFC from day one. And I'll tell you what's different about her loss than a whole host of other people. And it was the way in which she conducted herself afterwards. There was zero humbleness. There was zero congratulations to Holly Holm as the woman who just beat her and was the new champion. None of that. Everything was about pointing fingers. Everything was about blaming people. Everything was about what I'm going to do next to come up here and put everybody in their place and show everybody that that was a fluke and I really, truly am the greatest. So then when she went out there and got humbled again by Amanda Nunes, of course, people celebrated. Of course, people looked and said, you were never as good as you thought you were. Of course, people just reveled in that whole thing. But I'll offer one more thought here. One more opinion on this before I wrap it up. And that's this. As I mentioned, Olympic medalist. You know how tough it is to become an Olympic medalist? That takes a crazy amount of talent and determination and everything else. Right? World champion in multiple organizations. No, make no mistake about it. She was the woman who brought women to the UFC. If it was not for Ronda Rousey, we don't know how long it would have taken. Or would it even be happening today? Would the UFC have women fighting in there if it wasn't for Ronda Rousey? And she wasn't the greatest fighter. We know that. But she was the woman who brought it over there. And it was because of women coming to the UFC that we got to see all these other women shine. And man, there was some just the technique and the fighting that we see from some of the women out there is just absolutely beautiful, right? What a loss if we wouldn't have been able to see it out there on the UFC biggest stage, highest level. Here's my point. She accomplished all of those things. She did that. She won all of those awards. She went out there. She dominated. She trained. She did everything. She was living her life. I don't doubt for a fact that she dealt with these concussions and suffered through all that and just persevered and had grit. The same person that's able to do all that, the same person that's able to go through all of those obstacles and persevere and win and become a world champion. That's the same thing that makes you great. Is the same thing that is hindering you now. That's the double-edged sword. That's the same one that's making up these stories. The same ones that's trying to convince you of these things that we have to question. Why? Why are you telling yourself these stories? What's going on? Think about that for a second. Think about the mindset of somebody who's going to come out there and win all of these awards and conquer all those things. Can't accept, from a self-perception standpoint, can't accept now being humbled a little bit and taking these losses. Maybe taking the misstep of saying, why did I believe in the fans so much? Why did I want to do with these fans? Chael Sonnen was right. A cautionary tale. And one last aspect to that, it's to the fans. It's to the people watching. That's part of the cautionary tale in the sense of watch who you believe in. Watch who you build up. Watch who you put up on this pedestal, having never met them in person, having never had a personal conversation, only seeing them through the TV or the computer screen or however it is that you're watching them. Cautionary tale. Everything isn't as it seems. Every person isn't who they are. Everything isn't what the media leads you to believe or how they're built up or all of these other things. Just keep all that in mind. Cautionary tale. Uncle Chael couldn't have said it better. Let me know what you guys think.